I saw Superman 2025 Superman by James Gunn. I'm feeling good about it, generally speaking, mostly because I like Gunn's interpretation of the character of Superman. So this is from the first appearance of Superman. It says here he's a champion of the oppressed, the physical marvel who has sworn to devote his existence to helping those in need. That is what we see in James Gunn's movie pretty much. He's out there helping squirrels. He's out there helping dogs and people alike. It's a big U-turn from what we've seen of Superman most recently with Zack Snyder's / Henry Cavill's version, who was a lot less altruistic, a lot less caring about the destruction in his wake. What makes a hero, really? What makes a superhero? Someone who saves others, right? Someone who is caring for others. Someone who represents kindness. That's what James Gunn wanted to do. You know, his whole thing on the marketing tour was talking about how he wants to bring kindness back into this world, how he wants to make kindness cool again. And I think he successfully has done that with the movie. And what really makes this movie is this interview sequence between Lois and Clark. This is probably the best scene in the entire movie. So good. I wish it leaned more into it. I wish the movie focused more on the journalistic side of all this stuff, the superhero ethics, the relationship between Clark and Lois. It shows probably like the most range here from these actors, probably the best acting scene. It's almost like a play situation here. And really the point of this whole scene is to show the two sides of what you do with your responsibility as a powerful entity in this world, as a superhero. And Clark sees it as it's pretty simple. If there's someone in need, he saves them. If people are gonna die, he saves them. While Lois is kind of playing a little bit of devil's advocate here, she's kind of slinging out all the typical New York Times media talking points. Basically, Boravia is invading Jaranpur, so Superman puts a stop to it. It's an invasion. It's more akin to a genocide, really. Lois brings up like, hey, like, Boravia is an ally to the U.S., you know? You're acting as a representative of the U.S. You're disrupting these geopolitical happenings on your own accord without even thinking twice. Lois acknowledges Boravia has ill intentions, but she's also like playing the role of her journalistic role, you know? It kind of pits these two sides together of like how to handle things, you know, within the system, you know, diplomatically, politically, versus doing something from the heart, you know, doing what's right. It's pretty clear to anyone paying attention that Boravia is the oppressor and Jaranpur are the oppressed. And so, of course, Superman's going to side with Jaranpur. It makes sense to his character. It makes sense to what it means to be a hero. Obviously, this parallels real world happenings. You could say, oh, Jaranpur is supposed to signify India. Boravia is supposed to represent Russia because the leader has a Russian accent. They speak in a Russian language, it would seem, right? But optically, if you take a look at what's on screen, the most obvious reference here is the genocide that's going on in Gaza right now, with Israel occupying and massacring the Palestinian population. And I think most people who are watching the movie can see that clearly. Okay, so I'm gonna go on Letterboxd and I'm gonna see how quickly we'll find somebody talking about Israel and Palestine here. Here we go. Superman takes on Israel and wins. And although, like, the comic book fantasy world, Superman lives in Metropolis, you know, Batman and Gotham, these are all like fake cities, you know, but they're all representative of reality, you know. So obviously it's not going to match 1-to-1, even if it's coincidental that what we see on screen appears to be Israel versus Palestine. The message is clear that if Superman were to exist in the real world, he would say free Palestine. And that's a welcome, bold statement in a big mainstream blockbuster movie like this, which, you know, bodes well for the genre going forward, I think. But just take a look at the leader of Moravia. Doesn't he look like David Ben-Gurion here? He's the first prime minister of the state of Israel. I don't know. Is that a coincidence? Could be. And because Gunn is playing within this world, this comic book world, and there's these made-up cities, you know, it allows for that plausible deniability, you know, so that way maybe the heads of WB can be a little bit more accepting of this storyline, you know. Gunn could be like, oh no, this is not supposed to represent Israel and Palestine. That's just what the internet says. This is supposed to be more like Putin or something. And that's like just part of like creating art within a capitalist system, you know, the mix of art and commerce. Sometimes you gotta like fudge it a little bit, you know, to get your message across. The whole thing is that Bravia is an ally of the US, similar to Israel. They're getting their weapons from the US, you know, via Lex Luthor. And you also have to remember that Gunn has always been a little bit radical. Remember the Suicide Squad that came out a couple years ago? That movie was all, you know, was a critique on American imperialism, its regime change policies in South America, you know, and the whole plot at the end there was that Amanda Waller, representing the U.S. government, was trying to hide the secret torture experiments that they were conducting down there. They were at least aiding and abetting that regime because they were allies to the U.S. government. And then in the end, the anti-heroes, in quotes, who are actually more heroic, you know, turn on the government. So it's actually not much of a stretch for Gunn to go from that story to Superman, which is a pretty obvious critique of, you know, the billionaire class and the U.S. government, you know, and their foreign policy. And there's also the other element of the movie that's gotten the right wing in an uproar. The idea that, hey, remember, Superman is an immigrant. You know, Lex Luthor, he's a racist xenophobe who wants Superman dead because he's an alien with superpowers that's getting all the attention, and he's envious of that, you know. You know, he has this whole secret prison, you know, where he keeps all his dissenters, the bad, criminal metahumans. And he goes on to the media to like spout all these nonsense about the dangers of these metahumans slash aliens slash outsiders. You know, it's a pretty clear allegory as well to the discrimination, the oppression, the kidnapping of immigrants we're seeing today in contemporary America, but also since forever, really. The U.S. has had concentration camps, whether it's of Native Americans, you know, the Japanese during World War II, any illegal Latino-looking person working in a lower class job is fucking fearing for their lives right now. So, you know, so this Superman, you know, stands for them, stands for all the oppressed. And so that's what I think has gotten a lot of people excited about this movie. So this Superman is the kind of hero that inspires us to stand up against that oppression, stand up against ICE, stand up against the Israeli government. So that feels good. That's a feel good movie. The villains in this movie look like the villains in real life, and they're not even that exaggerated, really. So you probably think I love this movie. I love the message of this movie. I love the themes of this movie. I love that this is the baseline for what a superhero means in this new DC universe. It feels, you know, feels like a more hopeful, kinder, you might even say a more left-leaning era for the superhero genre. I talked about in a video I did a few years ago now about how I think the future of superheroes is leftism, you know, because the logical conclusion is you're going to end up being a revolutionary if you want to do good in this world, you know. So maybe we're on our way to that revolutionary hero. I don't know. You can hope. We'll see where it goes. I'm hopeful for the future of this new Gunn universe. But as a movie, I thought it was an okay movie. On Letterboxd, I gave it a 3 out of 5. I wanted to see more of Lewis and Clark's relationship. They have really good chemistry. Like, you know, they probably shared like the sexiest on-screen kiss of any superhero movie I've seen in forever. I even spent some time last night watching some press junket interviews of David Cornsweet and Rachel Brosnahan being all cute together. Also, there was a cool compilation of Nicholas Hoult and David Cornsweet, you know, flirting with each other. Like, it was pretty cool stuff. It's a good cast, you know, but the James Gunn of it all, it's like hit or miss for me a lot of the times. I find some of the humor is just not as appealing to me, and this is like the most comic booky movie of all comic book movies, and sometimes it's a little bit too comic booky for my taste. And then in the climax, it kind of just loses the thread and gets all messy. Actually, let's get into spoilers and discuss a little bit more why this movie didn't gel with me as much as it did with other people. But if you're at all interested in superhero stuff, or wanting to see something a little bit kinder in the superhero genre, a little bit more inspirational, I recommend it. It's an acceptable popcorn movie with some spice of real world politics that might make you feel good, you know. Here we go. Let's spoiler it out. Let's go all spoilery. We're in spoilers now. I imagine you've watched the movie or you don't care about spoilers. So first of all, I feel like the characterization of Lex Luthor could have used a little bit more depth to him. I appreciate that he was like pretty much pure evil. I don't mind that he's not like a morally gray Lex Luthor. I think it's cool that he's like he's representative of all the evil billionaires in the world. Like, yeah, he's an asshole, and you shouldn't be at all rooting for him or anything, of course. But I feel like he starts at 11, and like he doesn't ever fluctuate from that level. You know, still show him off as like the bad guy, but give him a little bit more range in his personality. I think he's always in his tower, in his command center tower, like screaming nonstop, you know, for the most part. Either that or he's like has a gun to the dude's head. And that was a vicious scene, pretty effective scene. And you know, that was an obvious reference to Islamophobia. I feel like it would have been nice to have seen him a little bit lower energy in certain other parts. There's the moment where Superman breaks into his office, but it's fleeting, right? You know, it'd be nice to see a scene contrasting Lois and Clark's relationship with Lex's and Eve's relationship. You know, their relationship. He was pretty much just the typical abusive asshole boyfriend who barely acknowledges her. And it could have been a scene, you know, that had her be a little bit more contentious with him or something, or the Donner Superman movie, I think. From my memory, the Gene Hackman and his girlfriend character, you know, she was a little bit more well-rounded. You know, that's the other thing. Like, I feel like the Eve character was just like lazy writing. Like, the ditzy personality was just kind of trash and silly, like, and over the top, kind of dumb and borderline misogynistic. And it just wasn't funny to me. I didn't find her like a funny character. And then the whole plot that like, oh, Jimmy is a ladies' man, and like it was his ex-girlfriend, and that's how that's how Jimmy got the details and the secret documents and info, you know, through her pictures that she sent. It felt like very convenient for the plot to finally take down Lex Luthor. And then I just didn't buy that she was into Jimmy. Like, if they had maybe, you know, more chemistry, they had like a scene with them to kind of better explain why she was so in love with Jimmy, besides him just being randomly a chick magnet. You know, they alluded to that, but it just felt like tacked on, almost like wish fulfillment for a nerd. You know, it's like, oh, like, let's just have the nerdy guy be a secret like ladies man or whatever. Like, it wasn't explored enough. That's a thing, that this movie is a bit overstuffed. Like, they weren't able to explore a lot of these characters. And in general, I just feel like Gunn is a little bit hit or miss with his female characters. Lois is great, but I feel like, Gunn was using gendered based abuse as a shorthand to like signify like, oh, these characters are evil, like Lex Luthor abusing Eve, or including the whole thing about Superman's dad wanting him to have this harem. Like, that was another thing. That's a pretty major plot twist for the Superman mythos. Superman's dad has sent him to Earth in order to dominate the human population and to rule over them and to acquire a harem so he can repopulate Earth, with his offspring. And, that's a huge subversion of what the Superman father figure was like in the original movies and then in most of the comics, right? I thought, it was interesting. I don't have much of a problem with that. Like, it's an interesting twist. It builds on this theme that Gunn is, likes to include in his movies, the idea of found family, and that his true parents really are just Pa and Ma Kent from Kansas. They're the ones who taught him to be kind, and he's the one who chose to be kind. It didn't matter that his biological parents wanted him to be, genocidal and authoritative and be a dictator to the world. It didn't matter because he chose good. He chose what was right. And at the end, we see him replace that message that used to inspire him from his biological parents. He trashed that and had home videos of his Kansas parents play to help him relax and to soothe him, right? That's cool and all, but why did you have to add the whole harem thing? Again, another bit of just shorthand, sprinkle in some allusions to sex slavery, a little allusions to misogyny to make it edgier and even more depraved. I feel like Gunn didn't take any of that seriously. Like, I'm not opposed to including heavy subject matter like that in a superhero film, but I feel because the movie, because it's so stuffed with all these things going on, it just washes over it. It's not really as concerned with it. It's mostly just in the background. And so it kind of feels like it almost kind of detracts from the whole theme of kindness that this movie is about, by not really addressing these misogynistic elements as much, if at all. It feels like it's being unkind to women. It rubbed me in the wrong way a little bit, is all. It would have been better if the movie was a little bit more focused, maybe focus in more on the Lex, Clark, and Lois characters, the main three, right? The whole Ultraman clone, like, that was another thing that it turned out that Ultraman was a clone of Clark. Like, that was kind of just like tacked on at the end there, even though it was like kind of obvious too, like, oh, like, how did he get into the Fortress of Solitude? Oh, Ultraman was always there, like, it with the mask on. Obviously the mask was important. Obviously he was like, there was going to be a big reveal when he took his mask off. It just felt like a little bit messy and overstuffed by the end there. As for the action, like, I thought the action was fine. It was okay. Mr. Terrific is great, of course. I don't mind having the Justice Gang in the movie. I think they played a good role. But again, a lot of the superhero bits I feel like were just fine, and really just the standout was the themes and this interview, the journalism of it. It's all a matter of balance, right? Like, if they were to focus more on the planet, then they would have to focus less on the Justice Gang. It's a bit tricky, but I guess just for my taste, the balance wasn't quite to my liking overall. As a standalone movie, it's lacking. It's a bit all over the place, but thematically, like, the message of the movie, like, I'm on board. Actually, it gets me excited about the future of this new DCU. I like the cameo of Supergirl, got me interested. Why was she drunk, Crypto was cute. I thought that was fine. There's another great moment between Lois and Clark where Superman turns himself in because he has to find Crypto. He has to save Crypto. Like, even if Crypto's an annoying dog and not really his, it's actually Supergirl's dog. It was so sweet when he said that Crypto, was scared, and he had to save him. Again, showing the contrast between the more jaded Lois versus Clark. That was great character moments. I like Metamorpho. Metamorpho was cool. the whole sequence in the prison breakout with this colorful river into the black hole, and Metamorpho turning his body into different gases and elements. Like, that was cool. I did like that. There were some elements I liked around here. Hawkgirl was cool. I like Isabel Marced. Nathan Fillion as the Green Lantern guy. Like, I thought he was funny. Like, he was a different type of lantern than I'm accustomed to, but I liked his portrayal there. It's anti-imperialist. It's pro-immigration because America is made of immigrants. It's always has been. It skewers the billionaire class. There's like a little clip of Maxwell Lord, another billionaire rival to Lex Luthor, who comes out and like he says like, oh, like now conservatives and liberals can agree now that Lex is evil. I thought that was interesting because of course he's just kind of playing to the media now because he wants to, look like the good guy. He just wants to take Lex's place. He's going to be another evil billionaire. He's the one who's like funding the Justice Gang here. It seems like they decided to end the invasion at the end because they were inspired by Superman, which I think was pretty cool. I don't know if maybe they were on orders from Maxwell Lord. That's unclear because like maybe Maxwell Lord might benefit from ending the invasion because Lex Luthor, after the invasion, he wanted part of that land of Jarampor. He wanted to colonize part of it and have a kingdom of his own. Maxwell Lord's arrival maybe didn't want that, of course, and I'm sure it affects Lex Luthor Corp's stock price or whatever. So I'm not sure how altruistic the Justice Gang was at the end there, but I like the classic Superman problem of like, oh, like he can't be at two places at once. Who is he gonna save? Like his Metropolis, or is he gonna stop this invasion and save the people of Jarampor? Turns out he has friends, so he had his friends help out, and that's a pretty cool, another hopeful, inspiring message that like you can't do this by yourself. Like we have to work together as a community around the world to stop oppressors and to be heroes. And of course, it's a sneak peek at what's to come, which is going to be the Justice League. Because now, I think even at the end, one of the characters was like, oh, like, now the superheroes are in charge. I imagine there's going to be different factions of heroes. There's going to be like corporate heroes. There's going to be like rogue agents who are doing their own thing. And then there's going to be like Superman in the Justice League who are going to stand for what's right. They're going to be the actual true heroes of this universe. So I'm excited to see where that goes and what they represent. And that would expand on the whole conversation between Lois and Clark here. Like, it would be more ethical in the sense that it'll be a whole group of heroes, and it won't just be one, authoritarian hero that decides the fate of humanity. It would be a whole group. So that, that could be interesting. But what does this entail? Are we going to get more leftist superheroes? I hope so. But what about you? Is this movie going to inspire you to be a hero? I hope it does. I hope it inspires us all to be heroes in any way we can, whether it's through mutual aid, volunteering, helping out with our community. Maybe the media should pay attention to the real superheroes in the world. There are some real heroes out there in the world, like activists trying to get aid to Gaza, then getting detained and kidnapped because they were just trying to provide for people experiencing genocide. Like, and what do they get? They get arrested. Those are some real superheroes. We can stand with them. Maybe you see some secret police in your area trying to kidnap somebody. Maybe you have the ability to stand up against them. People have stood up against ICE and they've walked away. These are some real heroes here. Look at them. They're scared now. What would Superman do, Superman would stand right in between this guy and this guy. That's what he would do. Those are my thoughts on Superman. It's a new beginning for the DC heroes. Overall, it didn't really check all the boxes I wanted out of a superhero movie, but a lot of it made me feel good, and it did pretty good at the box office. People responding. It's got good audience score, got good critic scores. I think it's a good sign. It's not just about escapism. It's not always about escapism. There is some escapism in this movie, but there's also some inspirational moments, you know. But it's also nice to have some affirmation that being caring, being sympathetic, empathetic, loving humankind is worth it. I think that's nice. What do you think? Do you have any issues with the movie? Did you find some of the elements with the harem situation and the Eve character uncomfortable? Did you like how the movie connected to real world politics? Did it make you feel cozy inside the movie? Let me know in the comments. But I gots to go, so I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.